afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Sabrina Sense Podcast, where I bring common sense to the world of work. Today, I will be speaking with Charles Aston, who is the CEO of TeamLogic IT. Charles will be going into detail about how to best protect your online presence for the year 2025. So, if you've just been living in paranoia or fear that you're going to be exposed online, somebody's going to pose a threat and breach your data, continue to watch this episode. Charles is going to share some of his top tips and tricks to keep your personal data and your online identity protected. Let's get started, shall we? Charles, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Yeah, same. I'm happy to have you. Um, I definitely would like to share with our audience today just a little bit about what you do for a living and how did you get started?
Okay. Yeah, I've been in actually information technology for about 30 years now. Started off, actually graduated from Texas A&M with a degree in sociology, which has absolutely nothing to do with IT. But in, the mid 90s, there wasn't really, IT wasn't a thing yet.
Yeah.
And it didn't really kind of start until the early 2000s, I guess. But anyway, graduated from A&M with a degree in sociology, moved to Austin, Texas, and went to work for Dell for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And then went to work for a private family and did work for them for about 21 years in an IT capacity. So yeah, I've been doing IT ever since I started my career, I guess is a good way to put it.
So, what exactly was it about IT that drew you in?
Quite frankly, it just paid more.
Yeah,
I was
that's
actually I was actually running around trying to get a job in law enforcement, and hence the degree in sociology because it's kind of criminology like type of
gotcha.
degree. And yeah, and it ended up figuring out that the IT world and the technical world paid a lot more. So, noble job on the law enforcement side, but yeah, it was kind of one of those kind of no-brainers when I first started off.
I definitely can relate to that. I think many
Mhm.
people end up switching just because of the pay.
Right.
So, have you been working on any cool projects lately?
Um, yeah, I mean, we do cool projects all the time as we get involved in so many different businesses, and every business is different. So, the typical types of projects that we work on are, let me say, like cloud migrations. And like, a lot of people kind of like, what the heck is that? Just think of it as getting all those systems out of your office. There's usually a closet or an IT room or something like that that has a bunch of servers and all that. So we take all that and get it out into the cloud, and so that people don't have to support that infrastructure anymore. Um, yeah, let's see what else what have we done lately. We do a lot of Office to G Suite migration. So a lot of people know the difference between Google and Microsoft, which are
Yep,
kind of the only two choices these
kind of.
days. But yeah, we do a lot of Office and G Suite migrations. Um, we do some phone system upgrades from time to time. It kind of really just depends on that client. But doing the voice over IP phone system upgrades has been pretty cool experience too.
That sounds like it. It sounds like a really great mix of just basically anything IT.
Right. That's kind of it. We're sort of IT generalists because we really do all things IT for businesses. So yeah, all
So,
over the map.
if you're doing all of these incredible things, how do you keep up to date with all the latest technology?
Yeah, I've been doing that all my career, and I read a lot of books, subscribe to a lot of different newsletters. There's a variety of them out there that I subscribe to, like Hacker News, um, Tech Tribe, Cyber News. There's just a whole bunch of them. You just subscribe to them, get a daily email, kind of see what's going
Yeah,
on in the world from a technology standpoint.
that's a good way to do it. Absolutely. Because at least then you know you're getting everything that's actually up to date and out there. Is
Yeah,
there,
and yeah, and taking training classes as well. So that, doing training classes is a big one for me too, in order to
yeah.
stay on top of technology, because it changes so fast.
Yeah. So how many trainings do you actually have to do to keep up? Is there a lot of those trainings?
Um, I have done probably a couple to three, 2 to 3 every year. Um, they can be kind of pricey and long.
Yeah.
Thousands of dollars and weeks at a time. But yeah, especially on the cyber front, there's a lot of training that's involved in that on that type of career.
Kind of sounds like education in general,
Exactly.
expensive and kind of
Yeah.
long, depending.
Yes. Both.
What is your favorite cybersecurity tool that you've recently used?
Right now I have a partner called Atro, and what Atro does is it's literally atro.com. They do what we call foundational cybersecurity, so it's making things simple for business. And starting off with the foundations. I mean, it's like building a house. So you got to pour the foundation first, and then you build the house around. But you start off with some basic things, and it's a very cost-effective tool. It gets you started with some policies and kind of gives you an overview of where you are, where your business stands from a cybersecurity posture.
That's a great partnership to have.
Yeah, it is. I know the owner of the business, and he and I've been working together for the last few years on his platform, and it's amazing. It's the easiest tool that I have ever come across, and like I said, I've been doing this for like 30 years, and I've seen countless tools, used countless tools, and this one we actually just makes it so simple, easy to use.
I'm glad that you're mentioning that. That's definitely something that we'll share with our audience today is atro.com what they do. Because after you explained it to me, I was definitely looking it up. I was curious to know what they had, and it looks like they have just about anything that you could use for an individual or small business, um, to kind of help to manage everything from an AI standpoint, right? They're more automatic.
Yeah, I was just reading an article today about some compromise that have happened in the Google world.
Hmm.
And what Google does is that a lot of people know that they do this thing called the security checkup.
Yeah.
And so when you go to Google, you can actually click on security and it'll do like a checkup. That's what Atro does. It does like a security checkup for your business. So it's not a bunch of tools within the platform. It's just basically saying, hey, do you have these basic tools? There's a big aspect to their platform that's self-reporting. So you just go in there and say, yeah, I have this, and it gives you a score. It gives you an overview. So yeah, it's a really cool uh, partnership that I have with that company.
Great. I'm definitely going to share all the details about everything that we cover today as well. How do you personally think AI will affect cybersecurity in our industry?
It's the awesome buzzword of the year, or I don't know, the last 5 years. It definitely in the last year, everything is AI, but yeah, it can be a helpful tool.
Mhm.
It also can create some risk. And so I think the with AI, the challenge, will be like, one of the telltale signs of phishing emails was grammar errors, spelling errors. It was easy to spot them. But now with like the hackers are using AI tools like ChatGPT, and they're creating these phishing emails that read like you and I wrote them, so it's
Oh,
very,
wow.
very hard to spot. And so, the thing that businesses need to do is they need, just like with Atro and the policies, you need to have AI policies for your business. And that is another, actually, a feature of Atro is going to be those AI policies for a business. And it's not necessarily going and saying, don't use AI tools. It's more like, go have a conversation about it, talk about it within your business, create like an AI team, just like you would, a security team for all of your policies, create like an AI team, create some policies, and just have conversations with your staff and how they're using it.
That's a
So that
great,
way you protect the business from things that could be not good.
right. Common
Yeah.
threats.
Yeah, you don't want to go out there and start putting in people's personal information into like chat GBT.
Yeah,
You've got to write some policies around how people are using AI within the business. But it can still help the business, obviously.
absolutely. Side of AI, what do you do within cybersecurity and technology just to kind of relax and de-stress from everything?
Me personally, what do I do? Since most IT work is indoor, anything outdoors. So,
Love it.
yeah, I like being outside, hiking, running, snowboarding, golf. Literally all my hobbies are not inside. Everything is outside, because I really like being outside. So any opportunity that I get, and doing all those types of things, like, it's a stress relief.
Yeah.
And the cyber world can be a little stressful, but being able to take time off and, like, decompress mentally is helpful.
I can definitely relate. That's just kind of the same thing I do when I do stress is I go outside and just enjoy the fresh air because
Yeah,
there's
especially when
some
you're in front of a computer all day long. Yes.
absolutely desk job. Is there any specific security tools or features that you'd like to share with us today that really help both small or mid-sized businesses and individuals?
Um,
Important.
yeah, there's different things, there's different approaches that you can take in the IT world. There's what I call break fix IT, which is, you have a computer problem, you call somebody, they tell you to reboot, rinse and repeat, and that problem never goes away. To what I consider to be a better option, which is what TeamLogic provides, which is managed services, managed IT services. And so we're very proactive behind the scenes. We do things when people aren't awake. We're not rebooting your computer and patching it during the middle of the business day. We do it at night, when nobody's around. And so there's those types of, through the managed services is one path, and then obviously through Atro is another path. So, just my advice to any small and medium businesses is just get started. Don't the worst thing the and I tell people this all the time, the worst thing that you can do is nothing.
Right.
So when you do nothing, that's when your security risk just goes through the roof. It's like buying a lottery ticket, right?
Yeah,
If you don't buy one, you're not going to win. Your chances
exactly.
increase significantly. So just don't do nothing.
So, in other words, use a better decision-making process. Instead of thinking about it and wanting to do it and just not deciding because you're unsure, just decide and do it. Just do
Yeah,
it.
just pull the trigger and yeah, just take action. It's better than not inaction.
I agree with that so completely. And there's so many people that get in trouble because of that indecision and inaction. So,
Yeah, you don't
anybody
want to be
listening,
the
keep
you,
that in mind.
yeah, you don't want to be the client that's reaching out to IT companies because there's been a breach,
Right.
because that's reactive as opposed to being proactive.
Would you mind sharing an experience where you had to work through a breach with your team?
I haven't, I fortunately, knock on wood, I haven't had a client that has had a breach,
That's great.
but typically the difference that I have with businesses and people within them is when they just don't heed the advice of the IT professionals.
Yeah.
So you have these debates and conversations with people, and hey, our recommendation is XYZ 1 2 3, and they're like, I don't think we're going to do that.
Right.
You're like, well,
Hmm.
explain why you should do this. You should really heed the advice of the IT professionals. So those are the typical scenarios, and I'll give you some examples, like where your data is stored. I've had a client before that had all of their confidential, even HR information, stored in free Google accounts.
Oh,
So that is not an ideal place to keep data.
yeah.
Dropbox is another platform that, it's okay, it's cost effective, but from a security standpoint, it's got
Not
a
good.
lot of problems. It's not a good place to keep your data. And so, yeah, you just, you know you don't, but most businesses just don't think it's going to happen to them.
Right.
It's kind of like getting insurance or, for your car or for your home. It's like, it'll never happen to me. But unfortunately, you have to have auto and home, but you're not forced to have cyber insurance for a business yet. But I think that is actually coming down the way.
I can actually speak to this personally because I've had my information breached, and it
Mhm.
was because of having a Gmail email address. So it was from my Gmail account, but it was through a company platform, Ticketmaster. Everybody's
Right.
familiar with Ticketmaster. You sign up for
Hmm.
concerts and things like that.
Hmm.
So when you're filling out this information online, you're not specifically thinking, oh my goodness, where's this information going? Well, the company saves it at that point, and then somebody hacked their system. So
Right.
I've gone through probably three of these breaches, thankfully, all with the same email address. And I think that's the main reason I saved my Gmail email account. Now, for some
Right.
like me who's had that breach and is kind of unfamiliar with um, how these breaches happen, I guess, what would you give as a pointer for people like me who have had an email breach like that? Would you recommend still keeping that account or signing up and getting all new accounts? How should we be handling that?
Um, yeah, my advice would be a couple of things. One, you I would highly recommend using a password manager. Because password managers like I use LastPass for business and for personal. And what LastPass does, and there's other products out there on the market like OnePass, there's a whole bunch of them, but LastPass actually just works really well. But the idea is that you don't reuse the same password on websites. So it'll generate as long as you want. It could be like a 50 character password. You don't even have to know what the password is. And then when you log into a website, it uses that password to log in. So I would highly recommend Password Manager, never reusing the same password for any website, especially in the financial world.
Yeah.
Banks and things like that. Just make sure you've got random passwords. Um, and then two-factor authentication. So, just highly encourage if you any chance you get to turn it on for any platform that you use, any business that has it, turn it on. And there's a couple of different ways, you can do, the two-factor authentication through an authentication app,
Mhm.
like Google or Microsoft has them, or you can do text messages, SMS, but that's not as secure as the authentication app. So I would
Gotcha.
use an authentication app in conjunction with Password Manager.
That's
And
good.
so anytime there is a reported breach of a website like Ticketmaster, go change your password. Just go regenerate it and get a new password. And there you read about breaches in the news on a daily basis, and there's even multiple every day.
Yeah. I've been told that if your account's ever been breached, cancel that account, sign up with a whole new one. So I'm
Yeah,
I'm glad to hear that you're recommending, at minimum, change your password. You can keep it, but change your password.
yeah. And two-factor authentication is a big one for sure. But yeah.
Perfect. I'm gonna keep that in mind. Thank you.
Mhm.
So, cybersecurity incidents like these can escalate pretty quickly. What strategies do you use for times of stress like this? Is there anything you would recommend to others interested in maybe starting a career in cybersecurity?
Kind of like we kind of discussed earlier, a lot of training, take a lot of classes. There are so many different flavors of cybersecurity, but, just start with training. Because knowledge can help with the stress. And so the more knowledgeable you are about,
I can see that.
the whole cyber world, I don't know, it just kind of helps you keep your head around what's happening in the world. Um, and then, like we were kind of talking about earlier, find a stress reliever. So, like, like exercise, a hobby,
Yeah.
just do something, get your mind off of it.
Great recommendations. How do you ensure that your actions align with the ethical standards of the organization that you work with and the broader cybersecurity community?
And to be successful in IT and cyber, you have to be ethical. You have access to a lot of data for businesses, so you basically have admin rights to everything. And so yeah, you can't be unethical and work in IT and cyber. So it's just kind of one of those givens. You have to be an ethical person. That in order to be successful in the IT and cyber world.
That makes sense. So does it mean that a majority of technology people like you are just going to be really trustworthy individuals by
Yeah,
nature?
yeah. I mean, you're always going to have some bad apples, but
Yeah.
all of the ones that I have come across in my career, 95% of them have been ethical.
I love to hear that. I felt that that was kind of a unique question to ask too, because people don't think about it. You're in IT. They don't really think about everything that, your character has to be about to support a career in IT. So I thought that would be important to share.
Absolutely, and I totally agree with you. Ethics is is a key thing for sure.
Can you describe the work environment of your company and its culture? How have you established that culture, by the way?
So my thing is I always keep it light and fun. IT is a cool job and career because every day is different. You're not going to be dealing with the same problems on a daily basis, so it's definitely not monotonous. And so yeah, you just we create this collaborative and fun work environment where we all kind of work together and help each other out. Especially so, TeamLogic IT is a franchise, and so all the other franchise owners and their technicians, we all work together and collaborate. So yeah, it's a really cool work environment.
I love that. Describe the steps involved in an effective cybersecurity incident response plan. Like, what does that actually look like?
It kind of goes back to, when I first started off in cybersecurity, I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but the thing that I didn't really realize was how much cybersecurity is based around policies. And so everything starts with a policy, so you have to have good policies in place, policies and procedures, and those things will take care of the incident response. Um, the other recommendation that I have for businesses is that you create a security team within your business.
Yeah,
And that, it can be a mix of random, HR people, facilities people, finance people, whatever. And you just create this team and everybody works together to make sure that the business is staying safe and secure. And that people are, one of the things that Atro is really good at is deploying those policies and
oh,
making
that's
people
great.
read them. And
Yeah,
so you have to read them, and then it actually gives you a little quiz after you read them. It's kind of like that defensive driving thing concept where you're taking it, but you got to answer a question.
right.
It's making sure that you're paying attention. So just getting people to be aware, and starting to have conversations, and get into that security mindset, I think is important.
Yes, I would have to agree with that. That's a great response for that plan. What tools can you use to analyze a piece of, say, malware that you come across? Is there any specific tools you use?
It really just kind of depends on the size of the incident. Sometimes when there is an incident, it could be something really minor,
Hmm.
and there's software that we can use that we run on people's computers to get rid of malware. Um, if it's something bigger like a ransomware attack, that's probably where we would include like a third party to
I
help us on that front. Yeah, so it just kind of really depends. Some things they're small and you can run an app on a computer and scan it and get rid of the bad things. But yeah, if it's something bigger like ransomware attack, that's when we would lean on a third party to help us on that front.
So what would be that third party, if you don't mind me asking? Like who else would be involved?
It really depends. Sometimes it's the FBI.
I gotcha.
Sometimes it's, some of the partners that we have. I use a lot of the Caseo is a company. then I use a lot of their products. And so there's one of the Kaseya platforms that we use for that. Trying to think of the name of it off the top of my head. Can't think of it. But
That's okay.
we actually what I use is what's called a Kaseya knock. And so there's a knock and there's a SOC, right? So there's a network operations center and a security operations center. And just depending on the level of protection that a business wants, we use a knock and a SOC. And so that the knock is the one that'll patches and alerts, and the SOC is the one that's going to be involved in that incident. So if it's like a ransomware attack, we would probably use the Kaseya SOC for that.
Gotcha. It's just kind of funny terms when you're explaining. A knock and a sock.
A knock and a SOC.
That's a fun way to remember it, though. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, they're very, very helpful in protecting businesses and all the computers within.
Is there a specific threat that you most commonly see, especially in the business community?
Um, is there a specific threat?
Yeah, that you see very commonly. It's just a big one that always happens or that is common.
Yeah, yeah, the biggest threat out there is phishing emails. It literally every cybersecurity breach and incident, probably I think it's like 90% these days
Wow.
start with phishing attacks. And so there's pretty simple, very cost-effective tools that you can use, email security platforms that you can use. But it's like think of it as like a spam filter, but kind of better than just
Yeah.
your basic spam filter. It's like just a better platform to use. And so we use actually a lot of times what I do is I run two email security platforms on a business. Just that's how bad phishing attacks and emails are. And they're
Yeah.
getting, like we were talking about earlier on the AI front, they're getting better at writing them. So they're slipping through your basic spam filtering. That's why we used kind of what I would call advanced email security platforms. So yeah, the phishing is always the biggest thing. And on top of that, it's one of the things that Atro will point out is your biggest security risk are your people. So, and the reason that people are the biggest risk is they're the ones that are clicking on the link or opening the attachment in the phishing
Yeah.
email. So you have to do awareness training for businesses. Just get people that do in that security mindset.
So do you think the awareness training is really just the best way to start out with your employees, introducing them to some of the minimal things that they can do to help keep the business protected?
Yeah, we yes, you got to train your staff, and once you get everybody kind of in that mindset, what we do is we do this thing called phishing simulations, and so we basically test the staff with
Right.
phishing emails that we send to them. So it's
Yeah.
not a real fish from a hacker; it's a fish from us. But then when they click on a link, they're taken to a training moment, and it was like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Here's what you should have done, and it kind of goes through and explains why they clicked on something they shouldn't have.
That's really smart. I would
Mhm.
say a lot of businesses should be listening to you on that front because it tells you not only how many employees within your business are currently um, clicking on these emails and could be putting your company at risk, but then you're also educating them in the process. So they're more than likely not going to repeat that again.
Yeah, and one of the great things about Atro is it's that's what I use for the phishing simulations, and what it does is it shows you kind of graphically, you know, how many people click on things. But one of the things that it'll point out is that repeat offender. And so
Oh,
if you have somebody that's every time you fish them through a simulation, and they're clicking on the links, you'll see that that person needs to be addressed. So, additional training or, send them to a class or something.
right.
You've got to do something to make sure that they don't continue to be that repeat offender because that's how that breach is going to happen.
Yeah. And it's kind of like curiosity who killed the cat, right? The cat
Yeah.
has 9 lives until they run out.
Yeah. You want to make sure that yeah, I have clients nowadays that, once you train them a few times, what people are supposed to do is you take that suspected phishing email and forward it to your IT professional. and
Mhm.
say, hey, is this legit? And so I have so many clients. I have email, my inbox gets full of emails on a daily basis from my clients going, hey, is this a real email? And so you tell them, no, this is not legit, report it as
Well,
spam.
that's actually a great point that you're raising. So, for any individuals that are just afraid of that email, they're not quite sure, send it over to your IT professional. And at minimum, reach out to Charles and ask him if it's safe. He'll let you know.
Exactly. Definitely.
So, what other potential security risks are associated with the internet, and how can those risks be mitigated?
Well, I mean, it just simply being connected to the internet creates that risk. So if you have an internet connection, your business is at risk. And so if you don't have the proper things in place to protect your business, like a firewall, all these things that you can do from a network standpoint, yeah, you've got to have the right hardware in place and it'll protect your business if you're in. So yeah, if you have an internet connection, you
Here.
you have risk. Yeah, you have risk. Absolutely.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'll keep that
Huh?
in mind every time I log on.
Yeah,
My personal computer is involved in my business every day, all day, so I've got to be careful.
exactly.
So, in a scenario where a phishing attack has compromised several user accounts, what are some of the measures that you would take to contain the incident if it actually got that far?
So that's kind of back to what that's that sock and knock again. So that's
Oh gosh, yeah,
we
we already
we
covered
rely
this.
on that's okay. No, we
Yeah.
rely on the sock and the knock to alert us. And
Hmm.
just depending on how bad the incident is, what they will do is they'll basically just shut the machines down,
Right.
or take them off the network and make sure that they're not being a vulnerability anymore.
So whoever the user's account is, even if it's 10
Right.
or 15, all of those
Right.
user accounts just get stopped right then and there, shut off.
Right. Yeah. The computers more specifically.
So once that account and computer, I see, once that computer is shut off, then the threat is contained. There's no further threat if it was just
Exactly.
those initial 10 or 15.
Yeah, exactly. Unless it's attacking other computers on your network, but still at that same rate, they would shut those systems. They would partition them off the network, basically.
Well, that's just good to know in general. If my one one
Right.
account computer is affected, at least I know. Kill it, shut it off. So how would you check a network to make sure that it's safe and there's no further threats?
So that's, the back to that sock and knock again. Those are the companies that are scanning the network for us and making sure if there's something that is
Okay.
vulnerable, that we're taking the necessary action to contain that vulnerability. A lot of times it's through patching and updating computers, and that's
I
again the sock and knock doing that.
Yep.
But yeah, just making sure that that vulnerability is no longer an issue for the network and for the business.
Well, we're nailing that one home, that's for sure. Sock and knock.
Sock and knock. Very useful tools in the IT world.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it's very common for a lot of threats.
Exactly.
So, say there's a new regulation that's introduced that affects data privacy for your industry. How would you ensure that your organization's data handling practices comply with the new regulation? Is there anything in place for that?
Um, yeah, I think again, it goes back to the policies.
Mhm.
And so you basically, through ATRO, you want to make sure that you've got a security policy and sensitive data policy in place and that your users are being trained and they're aware of the policies that they're reading and signing. And it's just, making that security again top of mind. And that's what all the policies that we talk about in the cyber world, that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to have that impact on the staff.
That,
They're supposed to make them more mindful of security.
yeah, I gotcha. Is there any creative technology that you know of out there that is maybe just fun to play with to design anything or check out for anybody?
Right now, everything in the world's so AI based right now. Literally some very, very cool AI tools and platforms out there. Of course, everybody knows about ChatGPT, but
Right.
there's a lot of different types of AI tools just based on the nature of your business. But if somebody wants to get involved in something cool and interesting from a technology standpoint,
Check out
it's
Chat.
the it's yeah it's AI. I mean, AI is where everything is going. Microsoft has Copilot,
Yeah.
Google has Gemini. So there's ChatGPT, but there's a bunch of different platforms out there just based on the nature of your business. But learning more about AI and how it impacts businesses is, I think, a cool thing to check out.
I think it's also smart to check out because I think that we're going to see a lot of AI being introduced in just about any industry, any process, especially if you're talking about customer experience, sales. It's going to be incorporated in just about any business process you can think of, just to kind of simplify operations. So I think in
Yeah,
general, yeah, you're right.
there's a bunch out there. Think there's one called Mosaic AI. There's a bunch of them
Yeah.
that help on the sales and marketing, all the sales and marketing platforms. And so it basically, I can start using an AI answering service to answer support calls.
Yeah.
And literally that AI bot is trained to answer support calls. Hey, I can't print, and it's just this, back and forth with, I don't know my password, and it'll give you some tips on how to reset your password or how to check the
Yeah.
printer. So yeah, I think AI is going to be all over, not think, it is all over the place, and it's not going to
Absolutely.
stop anytime soon.
Yeah. Actually, I think that we talked about this in our initial interview where we got to talking about ChatGPT and how now AI, you can have a whole friend in AI, like
Yeah,
a person simulated back to you.
yeah, exactly.
So start being friends with AI.
Yes. Yeah, embrace the technology. I always say embrace the change.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
don't resist the change, embrace it
I
because
agree.
it'll help. It's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great tip. So, say your company wants to roll out a new AI-based system just to help some of those internal processes in your teams. How would you research and communicate AI's potential risks to your organization? Do you have a security process for that? Or is it just kind of going
Um,
back to
it's everything's going to go
HR?
back to those all back to the policies. I think it's more just having those internal conversations within your business and open conversations about, hey, are you using AI? And if so, how are you using it? And just start to create some policies or framework around the usage of AI.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. So, say you discover an unsecured device that's connected to a corporate network. What steps would you take to identify and secure the device? Does it go back to that sock and knock process we were talking about?
Um, it really depends on the device. We actually use something called what's called an MDM or mobile device management
Hmm.
platforms. And what those do is it allows us to containerize corporate information, from personal information. And so we can utilize that MDM to do all sorts of things. And so if there's an issue or if the person leaves the company and we want to erase the data, we can do all sorts of fun things with the MDM. And so yeah, we use we use that quite a lot actually with small medium businesses.
Well, that's good to know then that process is taken care of. Is there anything else that you really wanted to share with the audience today?
I think, we kind of talked about doing the ASTRO risk assessment. So from a cybersecurity standpoint, it's all about the policies, of course, but anything that you do from a cyber standpoint, it all starts with a risk assessment. And so you have to start off with the risk. That's step one. And so literally Atro makes it so easy. You take a risk assessment in like 10 minutes, and then we kind of get that picture overview of where your business is from a cyber standpoint.
Great.
Yeah. So I think getting people to just take that kind of initial step, or what I said earlier about not doing anything at all, just do
Yeah.
something. And that's something that you can do is take that risk assessment, and that'll give you a picture. And there's no cost to doing the risk assessment. You can take a look at the actual platform and what all it provides for your business.
Oh, that's such a great suggestion. Thank you.
Mhm.
And lastly, where can our audience find you? Is there a specific social media platform you use or website that you have?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a website. I think you were going to include a link to that free risk assessment.
Absolutely.
Um, but yeah, phone number, email address, website, LinkedIn profile, all the above.
Perfect. And for anybody that wants to get in touch with Charles or has any questions about anything we've covered today, I'll leave all of the information there in the chat. And yeah, that should be simple for you guys to find him. So connect with him, engage with his company, and check out his risk assessment. It's going to be very, very useful, I promise.
Absolutely.
So thank you again, Charles, for joining us today. I know this seemed like a little bit of a quicker process, but I guess with technology, you shared so much value. I ran out of questions.
Like I said, the best thing you can do is something.
Yes,
Take that risk assessment. It's that simple. 10 minutes and you'll
great.
be done with it. Yeah,
And we will all do that. Check it out, guys. And thank you again, Charles, for joining me today. It was such a pleasure having you. I look forward to hopefully following up with you in a future episode. Would that be all right
absolutely.
with you?
Absolutely. Love it.
Oh,
That'd be
sweet.
great.
I'm
Thank you
excited.
for taking the time. Thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely. And likewise, thank you for your time.